All right, so I just want to welcome everybody to my YouTube channel, and just thanks for those of you who are believers. You're well aware of the Bible and what the Bible talks about with Christians being the salt of the earth and essentially the light of the world. For those of you who are unbelievers, this analogy may not be familiar with you, but essentially it comes from the book of Matthew. So we can actually pull it up real quick and I can read it. So Matthew chapter 5, verse 13. It's in a segment, Believers are the Salt and Light. So chapter 5, verse 13 says, "You are the salt of the earth, but if the salt loses its flavor, how shall it be seasoned? It is then good for nothing but to be thrown out and trampled underfoot by men. You are the light of the world. A city that is set on a hill cannot be hidden, nor do they light a lamp and put it under a basket, but on a lampstand, and it gives light to all who are in the house. Let your light so shine before men that they may see your good works and glorify your Father in heaven." So essentially, for like the past month, 2 months maybe, I've felt it really impressed on me within my spirit to start a YouTube channel called Salt of the Earth. And in essence, it's just going to be a Christian basis YouTube channel that's going to, I think, help other Christians, and I think just essentially be a message to unbelievers alike, and how do we conduct our lives and what we do day in and day out as Christians and believers, and what that representation looks like. Essentially, the analogy within this, what it means, and how we move forward once we become saved and dedicate and give our life to Jesus Christ. As it relates to the salt, a salt is a preservative, right? It's something we use as seasoning. It's something that probably is in every single household. And so I think it's important that we take this to heart and we understand being the salt of the earth has not only specific meaning, but it's an impactful command that Christ has given us, because these words are in red, so these were written and they were spoken by our Lord Jesus Christ. And so in essence, the darkness that we see in our society, the things that come against us in the spiritual realm, as far as it being demonic and the wickedness, if we have Jesus Christ in us and us being the salt of the earth, that's going to help preserve and keep that demonic realm and that spiritual wickedness at bay and keep it pushed back where it belongs. I think oftentimes cultural Christianity that we see today, we don't give enough credit, honestly, to the devil, and we don't believe in what the devil is capable of doing. And that's a lie that so many people have bought into. That's a belief that so many people have been deceived by when it comes to the spiritual realm and what the devil is capable of and what he's not. So in essence, they don't recognize how impactful and the importance of that command to be the salt and the light of the earth. And in essence, that allows and permits the devil to move and to operate on his own volition, and it creates a lot of problems in the church. We've seen it, honestly, with the Roe versus Wade case, and the aspect of it took just so many decades for this to get overturned, and there's a lot of complacency with the church and things that the church does and how they operate and the acceptance of certain practices, and not confronting it head on from a biblical perspective and the way that we should, in order to preserve God's creation and the earth in the way that we're commanded to. It's complacency within the church. It's our fear to be confrontational, or our fear of standing out, and it ostracizing us away from the crowd of the church, or maybe the money and the revenue of the church, And in essence, it's permitted and allowed a counterfeit gospel to be presented in churches, and the majority of churches in America. And the counterfeit gospel is now eroding and permitting the devil to erode earth out from under us, in essence, with just the spiritual activity in the demonic realm and the evil things that you see and the manifestation continuously of, the principalities of wickedness and darkness that roams around like a roaring lion. The Bible tells us of this. The Bible explains that he is out there seeking who he may devour. And it gives us these commands, put on the full armor of God, and the instructions to pray and to read and to fast and to day in and day out be diligent in the faith. And so often we don't do that as Christians. We don't do that as a body of believers. We show up to church and we expect the preacher to do it. We expect the pastor or the evangelist or the worship team, all these other people. Well, they're supposed to kind of give me that spiritual high, like Jesus is some opioid that is supposed to give us a fix to last us the whole week until we come back to church. And that's just not the case. Like, we're supposed to be the world's fix. The world is supposed to see Christ in us and see the Spirit and the love of God in us, and through that draw to him because they see something that they're missing, something that their life lacks. And that's the seasoning, that's the flavor, that's the allness of who God is and what he represents. And so much of the church is lacking that. They're missing the true, unadulterated version of Christianity. And so many services that I've attended and people that I've spoke to, they get maybe a nice theological approach to the Bible. They get a nice, philosophical aspect of the Bible, or they get something that makes them feel good and it maybe resonates with them for a couple of days. But the discipline within the discipleship of Christians and that daily commitment and walk isn't present. And due to that, it's not preserving the earth the way that it's intended. The way that Matthew 5:13 is describing that we are the salt of the earth. And if the salt loses its flavor, then how shall it be seasoned? It is then good for nothing but to be thrown out and trampled underfoot by men. And that's just what's been happening. Like, just since my adult life has started, the past decade and a little more, I've just witnessed just the trampling of Christians in a spiritual sense, and the inability for the church to actually make greater strides to maybe see your loved ones saved or your loved ones healed, or to see the spiritual component in the demonic realm, and devils cast out, because of the lack of belief or the lack of faith, or honestly just the lack of discipline and commitment to God, that it does what it's intended, and that's that it preserving the earth and essentially seasoning a Christian's life to where their life day in and day out represents Christ.